Hello there! Welcome to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. I wasn't expecting to come back to Captain of Industry until Update 4, but I've had a strange question stuck in my head, and the only way I'll be able to stop thinking about it is to answer it. And that question is, can we launch a rocket using only the power of corn? Told you it was a strange question. In our Update 3 playthrough, I said I love that Captain of Industry is a no right answer game. There are many equally valid ways to solve the problems that the game poses, and you can play differently every time if you want. All things considered though, our build was pretty meta, which was intentional. We were aiming to make the game approachable, so naturally we played more or less the way that people tend to play. It was the right decision for that playthrough, but as a result, it didn't show off the no right answer aspect of Captain of Industry as much as it could have. Since that playthrough wrapped up, I've been thinking about absurd counterexamples that would better illustrate that flexibility, and in scrolling through the recipe book, I was struck by the power of corn. So to illustrate that power, I want to launch a rocket with some very silly self-imposed restrictions. So, this playthrough has two simple rules. 1. No oil refining whatsoever. 2. No contracts whatsoever. Pretty stupid, right? Those are two core Captain of Industry systems we're circumventing. Here's the thing though. Corn can be digested into fuel gas, turned into ethanol, or ground into animal feed. And thanks to Captain of Industry's recipe flexibilities, those intermediaries can get us further than you might think. This won't be a full long-form playthrough, so if you want to see something a bit slower where I walk through the game and share my thinking more thoroughly, and don't build an entire island around the persistent intrusive thought of corn, check that series out. We'll link to it at the end. I will still, of course, explain what we're doing and why we're doing it along the way. I'll just gloss over a lot of the downtime. Let's get into it. So, what map are we going to play on? We should solve for a good amount of wide open farming space because, good lord, are we going to need it. I actually think New Haven is a great map for this, but we just played on New Haven, so we'll strike that off the list. Of the remaining maps, there are actually quite a few that have sufficient space, but I think we're going to go with Dragontail, since all else equal, that is an Update 3 map specifically designed to encourage the use of trains. There are a few good candidates, but I would mostly just say don't play You Shall Not Pass, just not a lot of arable land to work with there. So, Dragontail it is. We'll play on Admiral, which includes all of the realism and challenges selections. And let's name our island, since we are corn maxing, Iowa City. Go Hawkeyes. Here's the seed, if you'd like to play along, and let's set sail. All right, here we are. So, in case you're not familiar with Dragontail, I'll orient you quickly. Looking at the resource layer, you can see we're starting here. There are plenty of resources, but they are all the way up and all the way down this long, skinny island, right? Nearby our starting location, we have iron, limestone, coal, copper, and a decent amount of sand over here, plus some oil that we'll ignore, and importantly for our farming setup, two decently sized patches of water that are pretty accessible pretty quickly. There's also, as you can see, for our farming setup, plenty of space once we tear down these pesky trees. In the longer run, we'll come up onto each of these successive plateaus, I'm sure, as we need to claim more and more space for the corn. Before we unpause, let's talk big picture and set our research priorities. So, the biggest thing to recognize is that without the ability to refine oil at all, we're on a diesel timer, right? We need diesel for everything. Vehicles, the ship. It's very important. We're even running our entire power situation early on off of diesel. So in the medium term, we need to beeline two key technologies. The first, of course, is corn, all the way out here. And not only do we have to research this before we research this, we have to go find the seeds out on the map. So that's going to be, of course, naturally a very big medium-term milestone for us. The other technology that we'll need is biofuel. So biofuel, we will be able to turn corn, digesting it into fuel gas. We can then turn that fuel gas with some oxygen into diesel. This will be how we provide the bulk of our diesel production on this island, right? Those are both a little bit further down the road though, so we have some short-term priorities as well. And because we won't be able to make our own diesel for quite some time, the most important thing we can research is the trading dock. We're gonna have to quick trade for diesel for quite some time, right? So the second key technology for us is going to be vehicles. And this is for two reasons. One, that only quick trade that we're able to make at first for diesel is coal for diesel. So we need the ability to both store coal in the loose storage so that we can have a pile of it and trade it whenever we need it, and more importantly, more sustainably, mine it, which requires the small excavators. So we'll need to get that going as quickly as we can as well. The third, well, we can't go find those corn seeds until we repair the ship and the ship dock. So that'll be the next thing in descending order of priority. And then for our further priority downstream of that, we need to get construction parts 2 going, because when we discover the second village, then we will enable a quick trade for construction parts 2 for diesel. It's a little bit more efficient, but more importantly, it's just a second trade option that we can juggle to avoid the price increase timer on quick trades. So that'll be our first, I guess, 10 technologies, and we'll go from there. Otherwise, we'll just need to do a pretty typical start here. So we'll need to slap down a lab and a diesel generator so that we can run it. We'll need to set up an iron smelter. We'll need to clear out some of these trees and set up a waste collection. So I'm going to jump in and do that real quick before we unpause. All right, with all of that in place, I'm going to let our trucks get busy and queue up the speed. So we will take some of these tutorial goals for ourselves, because why wouldn't we? It's stuff we're going to need to do anyway, and we can certainly use the boosts. We'll set up a farm once these trees are cleared out, but the most important part is just to get the rest of this up and running. So we'll check back in here shortly. The only other thing I think I should probably point out is that we are removing the ability for trucks to dump dirt just anywhere so far. I'll explain more about that in a moment, but dirt is going to be gold in this playthrough, so we need to be very careful with it. All right. Once we are a little bit further up and running, and I remember to actually add our molten channels here, we will check in again soon. All right, we've got the trading dock unlocked, so let's go ahead and slap that down. This will, as we said, be pretty key for our survival early on. We desperately are going to need access to diesel going forward. So let's go ahead and get this built, and we'll show off again here. This quick trade right here is going to be very important for us. So important, in fact, that I'm going to proactively trade for it, even if we're not hurting for diesel, just to make sure that we're getting through the timer that is associated with the cooldown. If you do this twice in a short span of time, the price goes up, and we'd like to minimize the number of times we have to do that. We will have to do it more than once, but we'd like to minimize the number of times we have to do that. So let's collect reward for iron production and let our trucks keep going in building the trading dock, and we will continue researching and progressing here along the way. So I think what I'll do here while we have a little bit of downtime is talk about our fuel strategy, right? Because diesel is early on going to be our biggest pain point. We're on a timer, and that timer gets shorter if we are not intelligent with our use of diesel. So we're going to want to minimize our truck transport as much as possible. So I'll be putting together some pretty janky looking constructors directly attached to our metal casters and so on and so forth. A lot of weird looking stuff until we get belts up and running, so bear with me on that. We'll also need to stay pretty low power until we're off of generators, because again, that runs through diesel. So we're actually going to stay only on one lab for a while, for example, and the other, in the longer run, right, we're going to want to avoid diesel as much as we can. And so when we get to trains, even, for example, we're going to go probably coal-powered trains initially. Those are going to be a big deal for us, not just because they don't run on diesel like diesel trains do, but because it will provide transportation that would otherwise be done by diesel-burning trucks, right? Hydrogen vehicles will be very helpful down the road, but that's quite down the road, and moving to hydrogen takes a ton of power. So we're way far away from that, but we will, of course, be very happy once we get there. And I think, speaking of hydrogen, if I have to guess, the first place we'll use it is probably in cargo ships. Now, remember, we're not doing any contracts in this playthrough, but world mines are in play. And our cargo ships, run on diesel until we produce an alternate fuel. The first alternate fuel is typically heavy oil. And since we're not going to be refining any oil, we'll be running any cargo ships we have on diesel, unfortunately, until we get to hydrogen. So that'll be, I think, the first place we do that. And once we have some hydrogen up and running, we'll actually be able to make more heavy use of world mines. Even though they are finite, they will be helpful for sure. So what else can we do here? Let's go ahead and purchase a set of concrete slabs for iron in order to get that reward. And we'll keep progressing here. I'm going to try to clear some stuff out of the shipyard here, and we'll see if we can't get into stockpiling a little bit of diesel to be careful here. So, talk soon. All right, so we've got construction parts researched and up and running. We've attached here directly to this metal caster, which will be more than sufficient to deliver that. We have, for now at least, our concrete slabs coming from this pile, and the wood is here. So we are minimizing diesel usage vis-a-vis having to run things in too much from trucks. I'd also like to keep this from receiving from our shipyard, but that is okay for now. We're certainly going to go through these parts pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and grab our reward here. We are not quite ready to build a farm yet, but we will be soon. And in fact, I think I will simply ghost plan one here to keep it top of mind for us. I've also ghost planned the vehicle depot, which we'll need to get up and running soon, along with the mining apparatus here to get iron up out of the ground shortly. We will also need to get maintenance up and running, so let's go ahead and grab ourselves a maintenance depot. I think for now we'll probably just place it in this area, and we're going to need another assembler, which we will attach directly here for mechanical parts. This will feed directly in as one of the inputs, at least, to this maintenance depot. Obviously, again, all very temporary early on, but trying to save ourselves as much on the diesel as we can. All right, we have our first excavator ready to go and our mining setup out here. So let's go ahead and assign them here to pull iron out of the ground, which will flow directly into our iron producing blast furnace. This will be here for when we need to shoot rock out faster. And we are, as we said, definitely not allowing our trucks to dump dirt anywhere else on the island. But that means we'll have to allow them to put it somewhere. And so what we've done actually is, on top of the oil patch, poetically, we'll be dumping our dirt out here because that brown gold will be replacing the value of typically our black gold. So this is the only area on the island that we are allowed to dump dirt right now. As our iron mining production spins up here, we'll check off a few more of these little goals, and we will, I think, finally build this farm. I've adjusted it so it feeds directly, for now, into the food market. A note, we have to make potatoes right now. I've tested on this a couple times, and it's possible to never produce anything other than corn. You can quick trade for potatoes as well. It just really slows things down, and it doesn't add much more fun. It's just kind of a pain. So we're going to produce potatoes until we have access to corn, at which point we'll switch over to corn and never make anything else for food other than corn again. So get excited for that, I suppose. Potatoes should be in here shortly, as will the rest of this iron, and we'll check back in when we have a few more rewards, and I think very shortly should be able to get the ship up and running as well. So, good stuff. All right, we've got ship dock repair. We're going to have to accumulate the construction parts to make that happen, but that will slowly but surely tick up here in a moment. And perhaps even, yep, food production gives us some of that. We'll certainly take it. We've got the beacon up and running and then pretty much immediately paused. we are going to add workers, but only as we need them. We want to stay pretty lean here, not just on diesel consumption, but on everything, because an expanding economy requires more diesel. So we'll try to stay pretty tight, pretty close to the edge as far as we can without crashing, of course. But we have food production up and running. We are officially doing all right there on the potatoes. And our pile of brown gold is starting to accumulate a little bit, which is nice, I suppose. So we need to keep this running for sure. This will be our bottleneck in the short term, but we are continuing, of course, to process as many trees as we can, as quickly as we can. In fact, I think it's probably even worth boosting that, not just to make more space and to make more coal, but again, as a reminder, good, we're off cooldown. Every time we have it, I'm clicking this button because we need to get out ahead of our diesel usage. It will increase over time. There is nothing we can do about that. We just need to make sure that the buffer is as large as possible so that we get there comfortably. And there is a whole bunch of construction parts that should hopefully, there we go, be the difference in getting the ship up and running. So, very good. I think we can probably check a couple of these boxes real quick. We just toggle this recipe and there, that's now acceptable. And we probably do want a unit storage over here with iron anyway. It's required for a lot of the ship upgrades and it's just nice to have a good amount of it around. So let's go ahead and grab that and that should give us this reward as well. As soon as we put 80 iron into it, I guess. The other thing we can do for reward right away is to increase our housing, but I think we're going to save the construction parts for now. It's a pretty expensive thing, especially when you are living close to the edge as we are right now, for sure. I think I'm going to change priorities here just to make sure that we process this ore real quick, and we'll check back in shortly once we get the ship moving. Actually, hang on a sec. The ship can get moving, so let's do that. So let's see. Pick a direction, any direction, right? Guess we have to fuel it up first, of course. So should, I think, immediately, because there's already fuel in the shipyard, take care of that, and let's get moving. See what we find. Slag should take care of itself. Our dumping zone for everything is over here. For those of you who are gnashing your teeth that in my last playthrough I was pretty blasé about going down one level and saving the top level with dirt, I'm at least giving us the option here. I think we're going to have better uses for dirt, but this would be an area we could slap down more farms if we wanted to, so we are giving ourselves the option. Rejoice if that bothered you in our previous playthrough. Great, we got ourselves a nice little reward for exploring over here. We'll get some reward for going over here next. We have processed some iron ore, grab that reward. And now it wants us to start moving in towards limestone, which is not a bad idea. We are going to run out of concrete slabs here sooner rather than later, right? I mean, we still have a few hundred and we can quick trade for them. We can get, you know, we'll get some as reward. Speaking of the word quick trade, that should be enough to trigger me to check. But I think it's not a bad idea for us to at least start sketching out the limestone quarry that we'll be setting up here as well. So I'll probably jump in and do that. So we'll talk again soon. Found ourselves a cargo ship before we had to come home and refuel, so that's nice. And I think we have built out the limestone quarry that we'd like to get going over here. We're directly attached where possible. And speaking of rainwater harvesters, boy, are we ever going to make a lot more of them in this playthrough than we did in the previous one. Corn is a very thirsty crop. And in fact, it's probably important to point out, like, we're not going to be able to rely on rainwater that much. Like, I think it's actually going to be much better if we are able to secure not just irrigated farms, but like a water supply via the groundwater pump or some sort of coastal desalination, etc. I just cannot emphasize enough to you just how thirsty a crop corn is. So that'll be very important for us. And I think we'll end up making a lot more of these rainwater harvesters because I just don't want to be running a ton of coastal desalination. These aquifers are finite and all of that. So we are back. We have lots of good stuff, but we are full here so far. Not a big deal. Let's refuel and get moving. An oil rig. something we will never use. Too bad. So be it. Keep exploring. Another cargo ship. Neat, I suppose. Good to know that it's there. Still not corn seeds, though. I've added a little concrete slab storage over here, directly feeding in. I think this should make this run a bit more consistently. Really wasn't too much of a point in Unity boosting this until then. Our trucks weren't getting it over there one load at a time quickly enough. But hopefully this is a nice little boost for us as well. Let's see. I think we're going to add another tree harvester as well, just to keep that rate going. We're burning them into coal, which is great, but we're not really keeping up on the input side. And as we said, coal is going to be very important here, and we are getting low on the diesel. When we move the ship around, we run through diesel so fast. So I'm going to have to take a break here and there, but when we are feeling good about this buffer again, we can get it moving again. Well, we've just researched basic diesel, and we will not ever use it, except for the fluid storage is a little bit convenient for when we want to move diesel around. We will still have diesel in this game, obviously, as we know, but we won't be making it out of oil. The other thing we can do to boost our coal production, which I think we're going to need to do in order to keep up with the quick trade for diesel, is to just start mining coal, right? So I think we're going to set up a little bit of a coal mine out that direction here in just a moment. And that's our coal mine up and running. Hopefully sooner rather than later, that will start contributing to our ability to quick trade coal a little bit faster, because it's not going quite as quickly as I would like. We're doing just fine on the diesel, but that's only because we aren't able to send the ship out as often as I'd like to. So this will hopefully be the difference in getting that in motion again soon. And meanwhile, we are coming up on our 10th technology that we've already laid out, and we should have construction 2, therefore construction parts 2, and the assembly 2. So hopefully we will be able to level up some of our production here shortly as well. Did go ahead and add the third housing here just to pick up the reward. Nice little bump, perfectly timed because we needed some potatoes here. We're starting to get to the point where, especially if the rain isn't perfect, and you only get bonus rain for the first 10 years of the playthrough, right? The amount of potatoes that we're producing, 6.9, our demand is 6.7. It's getting pretty close. Things have to go perfectly just to keep things balanced. So we're getting to the point where we're going to need a second farm here pretty shortly. And if we can push that off with a quick trade or a bonus here or there, we're certainly going to take that. As we kind of get up close to the end of what I've already talked about for queuing up on research, there's a couple things that are of interest to us once we're on the other side here of construction 2. I think conveyor belts, of course, are super valuable for reducing the amount of truck transport that we need to do, sort of speeding things up in general as well. It makes things more efficient as well as consuming less diesel. The fuel station would be great because this is more fuel efficient. Right now, our excavators or tree harvesters, everyone who needs to refuel is going all the way back to the only place we actually have diesel physically in the entire map, which is the shipyard. And that is inefficient, again, both fuel inefficient and production inefficient. So we'll want to get that up and running in relatively short order. And then, of course, the irrigated farm setup, crop rotation, these are things that will help boost our food production. And we'll want to get that going too. Plus water. You know, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. We definitely want to get moving. We're getting to the point where we're starting to feel the fact that we only have one lab going, but I don't know if I quite want to justify a second lab yet. We might wait until we're ready to go to Research Lab 1 before we do that. We have just the basic one right now. So let's welcome some new refugees, maybe even one more batch before I pause that again. And I think it's okay for us to get exploring again once we reload the ship. So let's do that. Some loot, nothing else important. I don't know, go this way. Our trucks are dumping stuff all the way through this mountain. I guess it is faster in a straight line. Kind of a cute little trail. Truck behavior, huh? All right, this is good news. It's not corn, but it's the next best thing. This is the second settlement. And the second settlement will allow us to quick trade construction parts 2, which we are just about to unlock here, for diesel. Again, it's not necessarily so much about this being an incredible ratio as it is just having a second one to juggle the cooldown timer on, because as you can see, we are staying pretty close to it being much more expensive for each of these trades. So if we have a second one that we can be kicking back and forth, that'll work. And 10 for 40, like 10 construction parts 2 versus, well, it's 80 coal when it's not on cooldown. it's not a terrible ratio, right? Construction parts 2 require electronics. That's the big value add, unfortunately, with construction parts 2. So it'll start consuming our copper and rubber, but we have a pretty decent supply of that so far. Copper, of course, it's already prompting us to set up. I typically tend to wait a little bit longer, maybe than you even should, but it's out here. We just find so much copper when we're out exploring and picking up. Like there's 300 in the ship in addition to the nearly 500 we have in the shipyard. I think we're gonna be okay there. The rubber is where it can get, we have, similarly a smaller amount, but it's still there. It can be a bit more of a problem because in order to make it, that actually consumes diesel, right? So that we don't want to have to do too much of, but we will get into it as we have to very shortly, I am sure. So let's talk about where to take things research-wise. I think the first thing to do is to grab belts. This will help us out with a few things. The next one will be to grab irrigated farms. Partly the belts is to sort of tighten things up in this area. Partly the belts is I do want to actually start to expand our farming setup, and you'll be able to see the shape that I think things are going to take here in general. And I would like to have belts in order to make that work nicely here. So we're gonna cross our fingers and hope we get there pretty quickly. All right, so we have ourselves some construction parts 2 being made. We are only allowing this to output to the construction parts 2 assembly if we have a certain buffer, because we need some. But it's cranking them out here pretty quickly, and this should hopefully start to accumulate a few, and in fact we already have enough to start working on that quick trade. The excess that we aren't using to actively quick trade, we will use to upgrade these to assembly 2s, right? Here, throughout, and that should hopefully speed things up a little bit. We have a good amount of stuff kind of built up on the ship at this point that I would like to get out into the base, so I'm kind of thinking about moving some of these out here. Might set up something over here for vehicle parts, for example, maybe. Let's say, well, we don't have to keep it full necessarily so much as when we have keep empty, it should push everything out. So we'll do that a few different places, probably also for rubber. And you know what, maybe we'll even make this spot in a moment, not right away because we don't need to, but we'll make this an assembly that makes electronics. Who knows? Let's see. But time to start making use of all of the stuff that's just sitting here, because we are starting to get to the point where we are quick trading a little awkwardly. So this is where the pinch is. We're coming up on the pinch. So hopefully we get through it okay. Let's find out. Had to do it, had to add a second farm, but did sort of relocate this one. We're gonna have belts in a moment if our trucks have to do this briefly. It's not the end of the world. And we'll end up having a bit of a sorting complex around here for what we do with the corn, I think. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning and why I'm leaving a little bit of space here. So we'll see how that comes together in a bit. Adding a second coal excavator out here, in fact, actually temporarily stealing the one from the iron mine, which will backfill over here in the vehicle depot, but I think we just kind of need to get coal going. It's a lot. 80 coal for every 40 diesel we need. It's a lot. That's why we need to get the construction parts 2 in there as well, sort of dilute that out. And of course, why we need to come to a different way of making some of our own diesel, at least. So we're getting there, but this is the pinch. There we go, conveyor belts. That's big, and I know where my first one is going to be, which is right here, to try to speed up the coal production of our wood processor or coal maker. That should hopefully help make things a bit smoother and continue to clear this space out. As you can see, this is kind of what I'm thinking. We're going to blast farms straight up this direction, and that's the sort of the route we're going to clear trees-wise. And hopefully we can run pipes up here for irrigation and run corn down this way for collection. That's the near-term plan, at least. And now that we have belts, I can more conveniently set up something like this, where we'll process all of this leftover copper and rubber and turn it into the electronics that we are now pretty actively consuming out here. And let's go ahead and connect that as well. So hopefully this smooths all of this operation. And as soon as it does, in a bit more of a comfortable way, we'll start upgrading individual assemblers to assembly 2s. All right, skipping ahead a little bit here, we have officially got irrigated farms, and I think what will be most important next is to get ourselves a water supply, followed by crop rotation to make sure that we're able to maintain fertility. Fertility will drift downward a little bit, but in the meanwhile, we have enough production. We should be okay for now. I think the water source is going to be more important in the short term. So we'll go that direction next. The other thing I'm thinking about doing and have at least blueprinted is, this is taking a minute now. Of course, the further we go, the more expensive each of these researches are. I think we're going to place a second one down. We don't have to upgrade both of them right at the same time to Research Lab 1, which is what I'm a little bit worried about because the lab equipment required to produce essentially the research to supply those labs, right? That actually can be quite expensive in terms of iron, relatively speaking. So I think we will at least build a second basic research lab, and we'll upgrade carefully, slowly but surely. We are starting to upgrade to Assembly 2s where it makes sense to, starting with sort of the inputs to those constructors or construction part 2 producers, right? So our production of electronics is going pretty well here, and then I think the next ones will be, yeah, you know what? I would go ahead and do this one next, but I think, of course, to upgrade irrigated farms is also quite a few. So we will have a period here where this is still pretty brief or a pretty scarce resource, but hopefully that isn't too long and we'll be through it sooner rather than later. So let's jump ahead again for you. Ah, shoot. Well, we got some seeds. Not the right ones though. Unfortunate, but we'll certainly take the rest of the loot in the meanwhile. So something, I suppose, in return for the diesel we spent on the exploration. All right, I think it's time for us to set up our own copper production here on the island. We are just getting, I think, a little bit too low, and we can't rely on spending diesel to go out and explore and pick everything else up at this point any longer. So, time to do it. Let's get it going. And here we are. Copper is up and running, and just in the nick of time. As usual. Very on brand for us, but it's going, and we have still a pretty comfortable buffer of Electronics 1, so not that big a deal. And here's our reward. We'll take it. And cool, let's toggle the coal maker for another reward. Way to take that. I think we might as well, while we're at it, since we are also going to be running low on rubber, we might as well get the reward for running the rubber maker. So let's grab that, even if we will essentially immediately pause it. It would be maybe worth just making. So here's this. We will also, of course, need to set up a little bit of coal on the way in, and I think we'll set up a diesel fluid storage here finally, after quite some time of just sort of letting trucks handle it manually. Let's go ahead and connect up as usual, all of our generators, the shipyard itself, and then finally here, the rubber maker. Now, we are going to need to set up a wastewater liquid dump, that's what it's called, as well. So we'll place that, I guess, here. Connect out there. And in a moment, this should all get built, and we'll be ready to collect that reward as well. So let's keep quick trading. And I think we've finally researched everything I want in order to set up our farm system. So I'm going to grab the fuel station here for a moment, and then we'll jump into this. So I will probably skip ahead the actual moving things around, but we need to upgrade both of these farms to irrigated farms so that we have the water inputs on this side, and then we'll run belts all the way down here for the outputs of what is currently potatoes, but will eventually be corn. So we'll run as usual. If you saw our last playthrough, you know how much I love balancers. We'll run all of these outputs through a balancer that will prioritize making sure that we have enough food for our citizens, and then any excess will bounce out and get processed into the various things we want to turn corn into. So we'll play around with this, and once I have a proper setup to show you, again, it'll just be running potatoes for now, but you'll see it, you'll get the idea, and I'll come back and show it off in a bit. Oh, that's a big pile of rewards. Grab all of these. Wonderful, that's great. A ton of construction parts too. We'll take that, Our ship, by the way, just found its first combat, so we are starting to push up against the edge. I will say, in my testing before, there's a decent chance, it's not guaranteed, there's a pretty good chance you will find the corn seeds before you get sort of combat locked and then have to do the ship upgrades in order to be able to go any further. It is not guaranteed, so we will figure it out. If we need to, we'll power through. Just keep quick trading, building an economy behind it that can support it. But it is absolutely a possibility that we will not find the corn seeds before we have to, kind of kick it down the road and upgrade the ship. So let's see how it goes. And I think in the meanwhile, I would like to grab maybe smart conveyors. How about that? Fuel station is something that I would really like to get out here as well. So let's do that. Just place it here and connect up to this same diesel storage here. There's our fuel station reward. Nice, bunch of diesel, bunch of parts too. Love to see it. Keep quick trading. There's, more diesel and parts too for slag export. Good stuff. All right, good, nicely timed rewards. Very happy about that. I am, however, going to pause the rubber maker. We don't need to be consuming diesel now that we have ticked our reward. Good stuff. Location explored. Here it is. Here it is. We have corn seeds. Just as I was laying the grounds to sort of make the excuse that we may not find them right away, here we are. I guess I should have projected confidence still. We have corn seeds. Very cool. Well, all that really does is mean that we now have the ability to research corn farming, which is still a few items away here, right? But now that we have that unlocked, we are going to beeline it. So, very good. Let's get there as quickly as we can. That will require some lab upgrades in the meanwhile, so something to keep in mind. But I do also think we have what we need to set up our farm situation, which I did say I was going to do. The nice thing about this, we don't need to send our ship out anymore. That is going to save us on diesel because we don't have to just pause this actually here entirely. We don't have to spend diesel looking around for the corn. Very good. Now, we had no way of knowing it, but I guess in a theoretically perfectly ideal world, we would have waited, and since we now have the seeds before we can actually act on them. But like I said, you never know exactly where they're going to be, so I think it's worth it to look early. But this nicely takes a little bit of pressure off our diesel consumption here, which is fantastic. All right, this time for real, I'll see you on the other side of setting up our farming situation a little bit more properly. Talk soon. All right, so I think it still needs built, but this is going to be the layout for our initial farming complex, I guess, for lack of a better term. So as you probably already expected, the potatoes for now, but corn will come out this way, and we will run it all down here along a belt, and we'll hit a sorter. For now, there's only one option. It's continue on straight ahead to the food market. We will, however, eventually be spitting corn, for example, out this way to produce fertilizer. We will grind that corn up into animal feed, into compost, mix it with some dirt and some water to create fertilizer, which will then shoot down here and send to all of these different farms. The other thing, of course, that we'll need to be providing via pipe is water, and a lot of water. I told you, corn is a very thirsty crop. We are primarily going to try to do this through rainwater harvesters. There is zero chance that we provide all of it for forever without the need for a backup, and that's what this reservoir will supply. So it's going to start small, but we'll add more, and of course we're going to need to upgrade the throughput of these pipes for sure in probably the relatively near term. But this balancer will prioritize and make sure that we're taking collected rainwater, and we'll prioritize that and backfill only from the aquifer as we need to. The other thing we can do from here is potentially also supply the settlement water. Not sure. We're going to find out. I don't want those to be in competition. Now, if we end up with excess here, which is possible, I don't want to bank on it, but it's possible, then we could run the water over here to the settlement directly. If not, we'll do probably a coastal desalination setup or something else. Doesn't matter. We'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But this is the initial setup. So it's going to take quite a minute here to build most of this infrastructure, and we're obviously not building everything from the start. So I will check back in here shortly once we have what we need in order to see it in motion. So talk soon again. Great, and as the rain comes in, our collectors, and with a little bit of support from the groundwater pump in the background, we are filling up this fluid storage, which means that all of these farms are getting exactly the amount of water that they need for max potato production right now. So good stuff there. We are researching vegetables, and then after that, everything else we need is going to require us to get up to Research Lab 1. So we've got an Assembly 2 over here. You have to have an Assembly 2 in order to make lab equipment, but this will start churning out what we need here. We're going to need a good amount of this for the initial upgrade for each of these. I think we're just going to do one to start, but we will then of course need to be supplying it continuously in order to research going forward. So once this is upgraded, we will connect via a belt here. There's an actual input that will appear once this is a proper Lab 1, and that will allow us to continue down the road to corn. See if we can't get there soon. There's a Research Lab 1. Let's connect it up, and this should be supplied automatically. Of course, we are still bringing this stuff in manually. We will definitely want to get that a bit more automated in the future, but right now I don't think it's quite worth, and we don't quite have the iron economy to get that set up properly. So this will do for now, and as soon as we finish up vegetables, we'll just pause this one. I don't think it's worth upgrading to a second Lab 1. We'll just go ahead and creep on through here until we hit corn. Well, we're cruising along here. We're still quick trading, hovering around plus or minus 200. It's working just fine. I've nearly paid off a little bit of debt that I've made on the Construction Parts 2 front in order to get this whole situation financed. And so I'm starting to think, because all we're doing is sitting here and waiting, that it might be worth upgrading this second lab after all. So I think we're going to do that. I don't know if we'll keep them both running continuously all the time, but this is taking a while, and we're almost to corn, but it's going to take a minute to research corn itself. And then of course we need to get biofuel as a result in order to set up and make our diesel. So I think it's worth it at this point, and I think more importantly we can afford it, which is the other half of that equation. So let's take care of that. And the other part here is we have so much potatoes, because so many potatoes, this setup is working so efficiently that we have a whole bunch of excess here, and we'll save them. We can digest these into fuel gas later too, and that'll help out. So waste not, want not. And yeah, we're just gonna keep on keeping on here. I've also been quick trading for rubber instead of running the rubber maker. Other thought that I had, and the other piece that I wanted to do already, but basically by the time I was ready to do this, we were able to beeline corn, is the captain's office has an edict for fuel saving on vehicle diesel consumption. And it's not a crazy amount. It's 15% at this level, which is, you know, helpful, right? I was taking a peek at this. I would say our diesel consumption is probably like 17, 18 on average per minute. And so of course, you know, knocking a seventh off of that, knocking 2 diesel off per minute wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I don't know that it was worth detouring once we had the ability to get to corn. So I think we'll probably grab the captain's office though in relatively short order, because it's a pretty short upgrade, right? 72 science at this point is far less than what we're looking at for techs out this far in the tree. So we'll probably grab it and set it up. And in fact, with all this food that we have, we can probably just trade that extra unity for the food consumption boost that will then pay for the unity required for the fuel saving boost. So that'll maybe be our trade-off once we're able to grab that. But in case you were wondering why that wasn't something I had grabbed already, well, that was it. We are getting to corn faster. That's the trade-off. We are researching it. So I'll see you soon once we have it unlocked. We'll set up our farms with corn, finally. And then the game will truly begin. looking forward to it. And Houston, we have corn. Very good. All right, so biofuel, of course, is going to be the next most important tech for us. We aren't going to fix our diesel problem until we get this as well, but we can set everything else up so that we're ready to go when biofuel kicks in. We're also, I think, going to queue up organic fertilizer in relatively short order after that. I'd like to get both of those two things set up. They are really important for this core economic loop that we're going to be building around corn. So let's start swapping in corn. So we'll do corn instead of potatoes, and then we are going to do the green manure still in order to save on fertility. So here's what this looks like. Every 4 months, at the cost of 48% fertility and 160 water, we're going to make 50 corn. How does that match up? Well, for potatoes, for example, every 3 months we make 44. It only costs 31.5 and fertility and 108 water. Now that's in 3 months to make 44, 4 months to make 50. A unit of corn also goes further than a unit of potatoes does for feeding our populace. We'll see once that starts to tick in here. But it's a stronger per unit crop, but it takes more water and more fertility to produce. We'll run through a bit more math with the fertilizer loop in a little bit, but this is fundamentally going to be the setup for our farms in the long term. We'll alternate so that we don't get the additional 50% cost of fertility for being a single crop, no crop rotation setup. And that basically will mean that, we have to alternate here, but it will save us a bit on fertilizer. Well, it'll save us a lot on fertilizer because 50% on top of 48%. So it would be, another 24, right? So 72. That's a lot to be killing our fertility every single time we hit a round of corn. So we will definitely need to make sure that we keep this rotation. I'll run you through some numbers later in case you're interested. But in the meanwhile, corn's coming out. And unfortunately, we have a whole bunch of potatoes in here. We're going to swap that. And we will start to digest these potatoes in aerobic digesters out this way, which is what we'll be doing with all of the excess corn for now. That'll turn to fuel gas, which will turn into biofuel. So I will get things set up here, but that's basically going to be our loop for processing here. And the other piece that we'll need to do, and probably out in this direction, is to set up the organic fertilizer loop. So I will get things started here a little bit and come back when we have something to show you. Get excited. All right, so here it is, our initial build. So let me take you through it and then we'll turn it on. It's gonna have to be stepwise. This is gonna be very expensive and we have to afford this before we can get it all up and running. But the way that this will work, all the corn will come flowing down here, down this belt. I've already added a third farm. As you can see, it's starting to back up. Then it will, by priority, first go into our food market, feeding our people. As you can see, we're already up to the gills on corn feeding our population, and that's doing just fine. From there, overflow will go one of two directions, and I'll talk about prioritizing those two in a moment. But for the first part, we are going to prioritize corn out here to the diesel loop. So we'll have a little bit of stockpile here, I'm sure, and what will happen is it will get processed first in this anaerobic digester. We're going to run through the potatoes first just so that we, make use of them on the way out. But as you can see, corn is a much more efficient way to be making this. So we're obviously going to be doing that. It's part of the reason we are picking corn to get attached to here in the first place. So the fuel gas comes out of these digesters and we'll have pass through a quick little buffer here because the crops are going to pulse. So having buffers throughout the system is going to be important. We don't want our diesel supply to pulse, just our corn on the input. So we'll have fuel gas store up here, and then it will come through along this pipe and into this pair of cracking units. Doubt we build both right away, but we will have that capacity if and when we need it. That fuel gas will get mixed with oxygen from this air separator. 36 comes out here, 18 and 18, so it's a 1-to-2 ratio between those two buildings. For now, we're just venting the nitrogen. Nitrogen's kind of an unloved material at this point in the game. I'm sure it'll get additional uses in the future. It, I think, maybe used to have an additional use that got stripped away, but right now you can either vent it or, in a very expensive way for this part of the playthrough, mix it with hydrogen to make some ammonia. And we might do this eventually. We don't have hydrogen to work with right now, but this is actually technically the only way we're going to be able to make ammonia, because we will not be refining oil, right? I don't want to get us too sidetracked here, but it's basically stripping sour water, which only really comes in very small amounts from making graphite manually or from distillation. So realistically, this is the only way we'll get ammonia, but it's not happening anytime soon. So for now, we vent it. The oxygen comes out, mixes with the fuel gas, and turns into diesel, which will output here to the rest of the base, and water, actually, which is not unwelcome given that we are having to feed, or water rather, a very thirsty crop, as we've mentioned a couple times now. So that water will recycle out this way along this big old pipe, and it will meet up out here with our fertilizer setup. The other piece that I didn't touch on is what we do with this leftover compost that comes out of the anaerobic digester setup, and it will also come out this direction. We'll touch on these in a moment, but the reason we are sending both of them out this way is that they are core ingredients in making organic fertilizer. We have to mix with some dirt, which, as we said, is gold in this playthrough, and is one of the reasons that I wanted to dump it here specifically, as I figured this would be roughly where our fertilizer production would be, at least initially. And these three will get mixed together to make organic fertilizer. We'll have a buffer of that as well, and then we'll send that down on top, level 2 of our water pipes out here, and connect it up with all of our farms. And that will help maintain our fertility. So you can see right now, by default, without fertilizer, we just hit this equilibrium. And that equilibrium is a function of the fertility we're losing from these crops that we are growing, the fertility that we are gaining from the green manure alternate, and from natural replenishment as well. So this will take our fertility equilibrium and push it all the way up to 100%. So with additional fertilizer types, there's non-organic, there's fertilizer 1 and 2, you can actually push fertilizer or fertility up over 100%, up all the way to 140. But we can't do that with organic fertilizer. There's only really any point in targeting 100% here. So we'll go ahead and ask our other farms to have the same targets. I was hoping that would work, didn't seem to. But so we will drag, oh, it did work there. All right, so we'll drag it all the way up to 100%, and that's going to make our corn more productive per harvest. And brilliant, right? We'd have to get rid of the compost one way or another. We're otherwise going to be tossing the dirt, and we have some water. No problem at all. In the other way that we can make the compost, because that's not very much, we can get compost from digesting any of these crops, also from processing sludge. This sludge comes from the wastewater treatment that we will eventually get to in the tech tree, and we'll make use of it there as well, but we're not going to have enough continuous compost generation in order to be continuously producing enough fertilizer, certainly not in the long run. So how else can we make it? Well, any excess that we have after we are full up on diesel, we can, in a mixer, digest down into animal feed, and then in a second mixer, take that animal feed and turn it into compost. Now, it's actually worth it from a net fertility gain perspective to intentionally take corn and grind it all the way into this compost to make this fertilizer. If that is confusing, what I mean by that is it's net positive. You'll end up making more surplus corn if you prioritize directing your corn through this fertilizer loop if you don't otherwise have access to everything you need for fertilizer. It's actually worth diverting your corn initially and prioritizing it in this direction for organic fertilizer. That is only true if you're using this recipe here that includes dirt, because it is 3 times more productive, 36 versus 12 input, for making this fertilizer than this recipe is. If you are turning your corn into compost for this recipe, it's not worth it. You'll actually decrease over time your surplus corn. But if, and only if, you're mixing in dirt, or if you use both recipes but are using this recipe at least 50% of the time, you at least break even, and it's a net positive in total fertility returned back to the farm, and therefore total surplus corn. It's a little complicated, a little theoretical. I hope it makes sense. I don't want to drag the Excel sheet on my other screen over here, but I can go into further detail if you are curious at some other time. The point is basically, in the long run, it actually makes sense for us to prioritize our corn to come out here to backfill any of the compost that we're not already supplying. Now, in the very short term, the problem is we don't have any diesel. And it is more unprofitable to be quick trading for diesel than it is profitable to prioritize this fertilizer loop. So we're not going to do this first. We're going to do the diesel first. But in the longer run, once diesel is stabilized, I think we'll actually end up prioritizing the corn out this direction, because that will make sure that we have enough surplus extra corn that the diesel being second priority won't actually even matter. I hope that makes sense. It's a little confusing, but crop fertility in this game is a great way to send yourself down a spreadsheet rabbit hole. But I have done the numbers on this, and I'm relatively confident that it'll make sense for us as long as we're using this recipe and have access to dirt, which we do, and eventually, right, can actually manufacture using gravel and more compost, right? As long as you have access to that and use this recipe, it is worth prioritizing grinding your crops back into fertilizer. At any rate, we should have enough of all of this that's more of a theoretical exercise than anything else, but it'll come into play later when we're building standalone farm groups. And we'll say, all right, well, we're going to make 5 farms, and we're going to devote the one farm's output to being the fertilizer that will cover all the remaining other farms. If you know about the FBR later in the game, you can use the 3x on one FBR to supply the materials you need for 3 other FBR at 1x or something like that. I forget the exact numbers. It's somewhat similar to that. So you can prioritize sort of cannibalizing one farm in order to prop up several others. And that's roughly what we're going to think about doing in the longer run. In the short term, though, we need to turn all this on and make some diesel so that I can stop throwing 100 coal at diesel every single time we need to quick trade. So I will get this all built and cut ahead a little bit. It's going to take a minute. These are expensive. We're not going to build every single one of these things first. We're going to sort of build one of each of these units first, but it's a good chunk of construction parts too, not to mention the air separator itself. We only have a couple hundred in storage, so this will take some time. It'll also take some employment and some power. Power we can make work. We have some capacity. I actually did end up getting out ahead of this a little bit and building another unit of housing and started to trickle in some workers, but we need the beacon going at full speed in order to make all this work as well. So I will handle all of that in the background, and we'll cut ahead here shortly. So see you in a moment. We've got our first diesel coming out. More soon. Definitely want to get more than one of these digesters going, but it's a start. And we're officially done with our potato processing, so it's time to turn this into a corn storage as well. Brilliant. We are churning out the diesel, so this is fantastic. So far, we're actually running out of space for our water, so it's time to start up the organic fertilizer. I'm excited about this, but I'm also a little bit cautious because this is, we had this big pile that we were initially able to chew through. So we have to make sure that this still works at steady state too. But it's off to a good start. We're feeling optimistic, I think. So let's check in again shortly once things are a little bit further settled. Yeah, so as expected, once we got through that initial pile of built up crops, it slowed down our production pretty significantly. No surprise, right? So, in order to try to offset that, see if we can't find an equilibrium, I've started adding more farms, and more farms means we need more water, and we'll probably have to add more to our groundwater pump collection out there too. Of course, we're also getting to the point where, since we're flowing everything through, for example, this single pipe bottleneck, we desperately need to upgrade pipes too. So all of that is coming into shape here. I think we're rounding into form, but of course it's going to take a second longer. The other thing we've had to do is to start chipping away at our dirt pile in order to try to keep producing enough fertilizer to keep up with the compost. That, well, I mean, of course, that's what it's there for, right? But it does mean that we're not producing enough dirt, at least right now, as a base to keep up with this, and eventually this pile will run out as well. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. There's a decent amount of it here, certainly. All the dirt we've dug up since the beginning of the game, really. And our compost generation is also slowing since we aren't creating as much byproduct here from the anaerobic digesters. So all good, as expected, but we will need to fully reach cruising altitude here, and I think we'll get there, but we're not there quite yet. I'll try to check in when we are. See you then. Okay, I think we're there. This is it, steady state. So we are officially producing way more than we need on diesel. We have this whole production chain is backed up and buffered. We have, of course, as much diesel as we need, all of the buildings required to quickly backfill it if we need to supply a bunch somewhere, and quite a reserve of fuel gas between the cracking units and the anaerobic digesters, and then of course 2 storages full of corn themselves in reserve. And in addition to that pile of corn and the continuous need of our settlement here, food-wise, we are also providing any of that leftover overflow out here to this setup, which is stirring it down, mashing it down into animal feed, and then from animal feed into compost, where it meets up with all of the leftover compost coming out of those digesters and gets stirred into organic fertilizer. And really, depending on whether or not there's been a recent harvest and then therefore the need for a burst of fertility, we're slowly but surely stockpiling over time organic fertilizer, which is great. So we're in a pretty good spot. Now, what did it take to get there? We had to add a few more farms and a few more rainwater harvesters. So what did I leave you with? 3? We've got 7 farms now, and it is fully saturating this belt here. We kind of need belt 2s pretty soon. They're not on the horizon, but we'll survive until then. But we also have several rainwater harvesters. And here's the thing, this still isn't even enough because we are kind of draining this reservoir. Not so fast that it's an acute emergency, but we need to keep slapping down these rainwater harvesters in order to keep that from becoming a short-term problem. Right now it's a long-term problem. It'll become short-term if we ignore it long enough. But that's why we have directed our tree harvesters to focus in this area. We'll just slap down another row, maybe 2, maybe 3, whatever it takes, and then we should be good. So this has officially stabilized us. We are out of crisis mode, out of the early sprint, certainly out of the pinch, and feeling good about it. Definitely don't look behind the curtain. We're definitely not deeply indebted. Actually, that's gotten better over time from the last time I looked. Our Iron Eco in particular sucks. It's terrible. All of this is deeply inefficient and nowhere near the throughput we need it to. I keep using Unity here and there to try to burst us to save us from a maintenance crisis here, a construction parts debt issue there, and I have not been able to justify running our labs for a hot second now. Doesn't matter, we didn't have any tech that we desperately needed, but the point is, as good a shape as we finally feel our corn eco is in, everything else needs work. Now that's a problem for next time. I'm looking forward to fixing it because it's driving me nuts right now, but we got there, right? This was the base that we could afford to make as we went along in order to get this setup going. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised that this bit of nonsense was able to essentially fund all of this. So pretty good. We'll take it. I will say definitely we used a lot of loans. Our trade reputation's quite up. Our interest rate is down. We can take 5 loans now. I use this a lot more than I did in the early days of our last playthrough. I've come to really appreciate that, like, as long as you're responsible with this, it's actually a very good and important thing to be doing. It helps you bring forward a lot of investments. So it's very good. I encourage you to carefully experiment with it if you don't use it a lot. If you're rolling your eyes and saying, yeah, man, catch up, well, great. That's awesome. And I'm glad I have. But here we are. This is it. This is the core of our corn eco. Where do we go from here? Well, we'll stabilize for sure, and then it's time to start looking down the tech tree and seeing what else we can do with corn. And how are we going to power this island, for example? A lot of fun stuff, I think, just around the corner. And, oh gosh, corner, no pun intended. We'll, if you're willing to bear more of those inevitable puns and just continue to ride out this silly idea, come on by for the next one. I am enjoying the heck out of this. This is really fun. I hope you are too. If you are, we'll definitely catch you in the next one. But until then, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.